Ayaka is an incredibly strong character. While she might not be as broken as some of the other characters, she is definitely still really good. And here is the full Ayaka analysis. Starting off, we have Ayaka is a 3 out of 5 very balanced, very strong character. And commonly people ask, oh, if she's strong, why is she only at 3 out of 5? And I think I haven't talked about my rating system for a while now. And since we have a lot of new people in the channel, and if you're new and you haven't subscribed already, of course, don't forget to subscribe. But commonly people ask is, oh, why do you put her low? Keep in mind that 3 out of 5 does not mean low. 3 out of 5 is actually the standard rating and should be the rating you're looking for. A character's strength is only as good as its alternative, that means it's relative to each other. So for example, commonly people like to claim, oh, Ayaka is broken, but they will like to claim Hu Tao and Xiao is also broken. And if every character is broken, that means they are just relatively the same as each other. That means they're all pretty average and therefore they are 3 out of 5 relative to each other. A 4 out of 5 rating or a 5 out of 5 rating are reserved for characters that are truly a league or truly excel above the others. For example, in the previous episode or character review, we talked about how Kazuya worked really well and Kazuya is really strong. And a lot of you also think that Kazuya is truly stronger than most other characters, and that's why Kazuya deserved to be a rating higher than other character, which is the 4 out of 5. So 3 out of 5 mean that this character is really good. You can roll for it if you like her, but you don't have to feel pressure to roll for them if you don't like them, because they're not like exceptionally better than other characters. Basically, that means that if you like Ayaka, yeah, feel free to pull for her. She's not going to be weak, she's going to be able to perform in the Abyss. But if you don't like Ayaka, then there's no reason to pull for her, because it's not like she's super broken, and we have a lot of new characters coming, including Ball and Kokomi, which is announced about a couple days ago. Ayaka is actually played as a burst DPS, which might be surprising to a lot of you, and some of you might be confused what even is a burst DPS. A burst DPS is similar to Hu Tao, where you dish out all your damage in a short period of time, and then you have a downtime. Now, the thing about Ayaka is that unlike Hu Tao or Xiao, she actually doesn't really have any major caveat. You have Hu Tao who burn their HP, drain their stamina and go pew pew pew, and then you have Xiao who also drain their HP and energy to go pew pew pew. And then you have Ayaka who, you know, really just hit the enemies and doesn't really have any major downside. That, in comparison to the other character, make her relatively easier to play or more comfortably to ditch out her DPS, which is a really good factors. Starting off, we're actually gonna start with Ayaka's Elemental Burst, which fire like a tornado for it and do a bunch of damage, hitting 20 times in total. This is actually gonna be majority of your damage, and it probably dominates 70% of your actual damage in a Abyss combat. It is important that you freeze the enemy prior to using it so they do not just walk out of the Elemental Burst. And since your Elemental Burst dominate majority of your damage, missing your Elemental Burst is really bad and really hurt a lot of your damage. And of course, because of internal cooldown, melting Ayaka does not actually work since you cannot melt every single hit. Please do not play Melt Ayaka, please do not play Melt Ayaka, please do not play Melt Ayaka. I have to say it 3 times because it does not work. Aside from the fact that enemy can just walk out of your Elemental Burst, losing you a lot of damage, you need to play Freeze Ayaka. Ayaka Elemental skill, someone that Ice Field, and that's pretty much it. It doesn't really do anything, aside from the fact that it will also give you a 30% normal and charge attack damage bonus for 6 seconds. And the way you can tell if it's active if you see this white glowing thing around you. So let me cast the Elemental skill once again. You can see currently there's a white glowing aura around me. That's how I know my charge attack and my normal attack are being boosted. Ayaka also have a dash similar to Mona. When you first cast it, it will cost you 10 stamina and then 15 stamina every second after. But when you hit an enemy, it will refund you 10 stamina, meaning that if you are tapping it, it will not cost you any stamina at all, as shown on the screen right now. It will also apply like a weak cryo, which is 1 unit when you pop out, but it does come with an internal cooldown, so be aware. And when you pop out, it will give you 18% crowd damage because of your Ascension 4 talent. Moving on to Ayaka basic attack sequence string, N4C or attacking 4 times, doing a charge attack and then followed by a dash cancel is gonna be the best attacking sequence. And of course her charge attack do have good AoE and good range, so when you're surrounded by a bunch of enemy, just spamming charge attack could be a really good idea as well. Although slightly contradicting to what I just said in the first impression as well, the charge attack is actually not that big that you actually cannot reliably hit both Geo Bishop at all. In fact, you actually just cannot hit both of them at all. So be careful of when to spam charge attack and when to not, depending on the enemy you're facing. Slightly contradicting to what people might be thinking, Ayaka normal and charge attack actually doesn't have that much good damage, and so she is not that good at doing sustained DPS or basically attacking for a long period of time. The main problem is just that her attack comes out so slow, especially with the charge attack, which come out twice as slow as someone like Keqing. And her charge attack of course have a lot of end lag, although you can cancel it by doing a jump cancel, a dash cancel, or just straight up switching character. You can see that I can switch character before the charge attack even come out. That's how you know how slow it is going off. Very interestingly enough, the Ayaka charge attack actually have a slower register time. For other character charge attack, you only need to hold the key down for 0.25 seconds. However, for Ayaka charge attack to register, you need to do it for 0.35 seconds. That means for gamers who are super good and have muscle memory locked in, they will actually be unable to cast Ayaka charge attack at the very beginning because they're not used to the timing yet. So overall, playing Ayaka will take some time to get used to and will feel very unfluid at the beginning. Anyway, with that being said, Ayaka is gonna be a character who rely on her elemental burst to do majority of her damage instead of her normal and her charge attack. Here in the background footage, you can actually see me clearing this floor in about a minute or so without ever doing a single normal or charge attack on my Ayaka. And of course, that is due to just how Ayaka works, being most of her damage is actually loaded into her elemental burst in a actual combat. Similar to what I have said in the very beginning of the video that 70% of your damage is gonna come from your elemental burst, potentially maybe even 80%, or in my case right here, I have 100% of it coming from my elemental burst from Ayaka. Generally, your playstyle is gonna be cast the elemental burst at the beginning of the fight, and then have a bunch of downtime recharging your elemental burst, and then casting another elemental burst to hopefully finish them off. For some magical reason, Ayaka's elemental burst is actually really small range and have really poor AoE hitbox. Right here, you can see that they should both be clearly be hitting by the elemental burst, and it should definitely be big enough to hit both of them. But it actually doesn't, it actually only hit the one on the right, and of course because most of your damage comes from your elemental burst, I'm losing a lot of damage here. Of course, with good enough positioning, you can hit both of them, but I don't know how reliable this is without either the help of Fancy or Kazuha in the future when we have different kind of enemy that do not automatically grip themselves. Because you also need to dash for the 18% crowd damage bonus, sometimes it can really screw up your positioning and your timing, and because again, due to the lack of AoE, I don't know how reliably it can hit both enemy in the futures when we have different enemies. Ayaka elemental burst having like bad AoE is my only real complaint. It was my only biggest complaint during the first impression video as well, that it doesn't reliably hit 2 target. But I think some people thought that I was complaining that Ayaka elemental burst sucks. No, that's not really what I meant. The only issues I have is the AoE. Sorry if I didn't make that clear in the first impression video. But outside of that, Ayakas actually have like no caveat. Ayaka have like no downside, not major downside at the very least. While it is true that Ayaka damage is loaded into her elemental burst and it have an 80 cost, Ayakas can actually comfortably regenerate her elemental burst even without damage ER. Generally, you're only looking at about 20 to 30% ER because of her elemental skill do generate a really good amount of energy, and generally having a longer cooldown elemental skill that generate more energy is better because that means you can collect your energy much easier. In comparison, at least to like having short elemental skill cooldown, it's a lot worse for your energy. So with Ayaka damage being loaded into her elemental burst and it all come out at the beginning, you could potentially just start the fight dealing a bunch of damage and immediately dealing with annoying enemy like the second half of 12-2. Here you can see that I started the fight immediately with my full Ayaka team combo, which immediately killed both of the small Geo Bishop before they have a chance to get away and waste my time by rolling around. And then I just spend the rest of my time trying to recharge my elemental burst, slowly recharging my elemental burst before readying to do that second combo again to finally kill the whatever this guy's name, Geo Lavatrio or whatever he is. Having all your damage loaded into a front load burst is actually could be a good thing, because then for enemies that only have a short amount of window for you to attack, you can easily dish out all your damage and just AFK. It's the same reason why Hu Tao is good, because all her damage is bundled into a short window of time, and in comparison, character like Dalu, damage come over time, but you don't always have the opportunity to attack. And of course, when you're strong enough to one cycle, which is beating enemy in a single elemental burst, then Ayaka doesn't have any downtime issue or energy recharge issues, which is gonna make her a much stronger option than other characters. Which, while it is possible and easily doable in like artifact domains, personally I'm not a believer in one cycling. One cycling is really only happen for whales, and appear that a lot of you don't one cycle in the abyss, so I don't really like to talk about one cycling, but that is something that is possible when you do have a really strong Ayaka and you're at really high investment, although you might need like whale invest, some sort of dolphin investment or whale investment. With that being said, let's move on to the team comp for Ayaka and how to play Ayaka. I started with the team comp this time because I think that is the most important. When you're playing Ayaka, you want to bring double cryo, mostly Diona for the cryo battery, as well as healing. But if you really need to, you can bring like Rosaria or like Kaya instead of the Diona. And then you also want to bring a Hydro. Mona is going to be the preferred one because it gives you a lot of damage and synergize with Ayaka really well. Xingqiu's could also work, and Xingqiu's is a lot easier to use and a lot more consistent. But personally, I like Mona. And for your last slot, generally you want either Venti or Kaza for the grouping. Both of them is fine. Venti have better grouping and better utility, especially with the energy refund, but Kaza do provide you better damage. Although I find there's sometimes trouble going with Kaza because he does kind of split them off occasionally with his plunge. In general, the way you're gonna play Ayaka is you're gonna do a entire full chain elemental burst combo and you're gonna wait for it. So here I start with a crowd infusion of Kazuya, and then I switch with Mona to apply the Omen as well as CTDS and freezing the enemy, and then I do an entire Ayaka elemental burst, attacking a couple times, although casting my elemental skill to recharge the energy. And then right here, during my downtime, this is my opportunity to recharge all my energy for my entire team by switching to the Diona and stuff. Here you can see that my Ayaka elemental burst is basically back up, and then I'll just do the combo again to finish them off, although I don't really need to do it here because they're already dead. And if they're not dead, just repeat until they're dead. The reason why Mona is preferred is because she can carry the TTDS both, which boosts Ayaka damage by a lot, as well as the Omen, which also boosts Ayaka damage by a lot. Now, while you can do the Omen extension, it actually turned out it doesn't really matter because the Omen Omen duration lasts for 5, which is exactly how long Ayaka elemental burst lasts for anyway. And again, the most important thing, as you have seen, is just to boost all your damage onto the Ayaka elemental burst and then just try to recharge your energy. In comparison to Xingqiu's, you need to auto-attack a lot to apply the Rain Sword for his damage, and as you've seen over and over in some of my showcases throughout this video, that you don't really attack in Ayaka. In fact, I think in the last clip I just showed you just now, I don't think I attacked that much on Ayaka as well, so it kind of loses a lot of Rain Cutter value on your Xingqiu's. But Xingqiu is easier to use, he is easier to sustain the freeze, and he has better sustained damage. Although when it comes to Ayaka, again, really, you're not looking for sustained damage, you're just looking to do burst damage with your elemental burst, and then recharge your elemental burst by rotating through your team and rotating through like the Diona and stuff. For talent leveling, your elemental burst first is the most important because it is where your damage comes from, and then your normal attack and elemental skill can come after. Artifact, always 4-stat Blizzard Trader, almost no question, and then substat always a typical crit, and then crowd damage and attack percent. In general, you're looking to build about 20 to 30 ER on Ayaka, since she does have an 80 cost burst. Again, she doesn't have huge ER issues, but she have little bit, you're gonna need a little bit of ER, which is like 20 to 30%, so very little. And for your weapon, the free-to-play weapon, the free-to-play 4-star weapon, Anemona Kageuchi, is one of the best free-to-play 4-star weapon for Ayaka. In fact, it's actually the best 4-star weapon for Ayaka. The reason is because it has attack percent substat, which is really good on Ayaka because you are already getting a lot of crit from your Blizzard Trader set. More importantly is that recall that how Ayaka need a little bit of ER, not a lot, only a little bit. That's precisely what this passive does. It gives you just that little bit of energy. You don't need that much ER to justify running a ER weapon like the Felonious weapon or the Sacrificial Sword. Apologize that my game is in Japanese because fuck reading Romanji. But the passive right here is really nice, and most importantly is that you can craft more and refine them even as a free-to-play player if you have enough the prototype recipe or whatever that prototype thing is called, and which will give you even more energy and you can comfortably regenerate you Ayaka's elemental burst back up. Otherwise, for the 5-star, of course, we have Mist-Splitter being at the very top and then the Jade Cutter and stuff, with Mist-Splitter, of course, being the weapon banner for Ayaka. The Black Thief is a really good weapon for Ayaka, but it's only really better than the Kageuchi if you can get stacks, because you will need to kill enemy to get stacks, and so in reality, you don't really have passive stack on the Black Thief, which making it just equal or a little bit worse than the Kageuchi. And of course, we have the Black Sword after that. The Black Sword does come with the critical rate substat, which is a little bit harder to balance since you have the Blitzstrayer, which means you don't need that much crit rate. But more importantly is that the Black Sword passive boosts your normal and your charge attack, which again and again, as you have seen, you don't really rely on your normal and your charge attack damage, and they don't contribute to that much of your output. So boosting that normal and your charge attack damage actually don't matter, which actually make Black Sword not as good as on the Ayaka. There's one last big thing I need to talk about, and that is the potential of playing Ayaka as a sub DPS. Many people like to think if Ayaka can be played as an enabler for your Xiangling, can you use Ayaka as a melt enabler for the Xiangling? And honestly, the answer is that it doesn't really work because Ayaka have a 80 energy requirement on her elemental burst, and playing Ayaka in a solo cryo just doesn't really work, even if you stack a lot of ER or something like that. But what you could do is play Ayaka as a sub DPS in existing cryo team, most noticeably pairing up her with Ganyu. This actually creates the current most meta team beyond Morgana, known as the Morgana. The Morgana team basically just take out Diona for Ayaka, since Ayaka is capable of generating similar cryo particle as Diona, and Diona previously was there to provide shield and healing, but in a free sim like this where you spam elemental burst, you don't really need heal and shielding if you're playing it properly. Remember that they're all 5-star character, so they all have animation on their elemental burst, which means the iframe that you get is actually longer. And because this team is a infinite loot team that you spam so much elemental burst, it's like you're watching a movie and you never really take damage because you are constantly just casting that animation and constantly being in iframe. Once you don't need the healing and the shielding, Ayaka is just a straight up upgrade from the existing Diano because of her doing more damage and it's packed into her elemental burst. With that being said, this team probably have one of the highest damage ceiling in the game right now in a team AoE environment. With that being said, Ayaka is definitely a very strong character similar to Xiao and Hu Tao, but remember that Ayaka can abuse Blitzstrayer set, abuse Venti, abuse Kazu, and abuse Mona on top of that, which in my opinion put Ayaka slightly above Hu Tao. Not too convinced about Xiao since Ayaka AoE is kind of small, but before I claim that Ayaka could be the second best 5-star DPS, and I think that's still not too far away from the truth. Although remember that they are all just more or less equivalent and they all fall into the 3 out of 5 tiers, so don't feel pressure to pull because Ayaka is definitely not exceptionally like super strong, or Ayaka is definitely not broken in comparison to other characters like Ganyu. How many people like to ask, do I roll for Ayaka or do I wait for Ganyu? The answer is unfortunately is going to be wait for Ganyu if you're not in a rush to get Ayaka. With the new 2.1 character being announced, that is Ball and whatever the other one is, Kokomi. We could potentially see really interesting since Ball is an Archon, so it's expected that she's going to be really strong. And we are getting a free 5-star cryo DPS, or not a DPS but free 5-star cryo characters in the futures, which means even if you're missing a cryo character right now, XD Kaya, but you know, even if you're missing a cryo DPS right now, you are not in a rush to roll Ayaka. But if you do have Ayaka, you could still consider rolling Ganyu in the futures because you could pair up Ayaka Ganyu together. With that being said, that's it for the video. Sorry that it's slightly longer than usual and it took me longer to get out since there was a lot of stuff with Inazuma I have to get through. I have to get the sword, I have to work on Ayaka theory crafting and artifact theory crafting. I also have to wait for the Chinese player to get their hands on Ayaka since on day 1 they could not farm the talent book for Ayaka, so they were late on playsetting the Ayaka. So I waited a little bit to see what the Chinese player are thinking, and similar to this video, they basically just have very similar thought. They think Ayaka is okay, not broken, but you know, very strong character nonetheless. Anyway, that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see everyone next time.